Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Brooklyn Rail's 116th New Social Environment. I'm Emily, a production assistant at the Rail, and I have the pleasure and privilege of being your MC today. Today, we are thrilled to have poet and writer Andrei Codrescu curating the second installment in a new series of radical poetry readings. Every Wednesday from now until the election, we will invite a poet to bring 6 friends to read political poetry. And today we are also excited to welcome Alicia Ostriker, John Godfrey, Sharon Mesmer, Eleanor Nauen, Vincent Katz, and Anne Waldman, who will be reading for us today. The Brooklyn Rail acknowledges that we are on the unceded territory of the Lenni Lenape, Canarsie, Shinnecock, and Munsee peoples. We acknowledge the many indigenous nations with ties to this land, and we recognize that the Lenape still call Mannahatta home. Finally, the Brooklyn Rail stands in solidarity with the uprising unfolding across the country, following the murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Tony McDade, Nina Pop, David McAtee, James Scurlock, Jamel Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Rayshard Brooks, Rhea Milton, Dominique Remy Fells, and Toyin Salau, and in response to generations of structural violence against Black communities. Black Lives Matter, and we will continue to support ongoing action in the struggle for racial justice. Before I introduce our host, we'd like to begin with a brief moment of silence. Thank you. And now to introduce today's curator. Andrei Codrescu was born in Transylvania, Romania, reborn at the age of 19 in Detroit and New York in 1967 and 1970. A professional nomad, he has lived in San Francisco, Monte Rio, California on the Russian River, Baltimore, Baton Rouge, and New Orleans. He is the recipient of 40,000 angry letters from Ralph Reed's Silent Majority for urging Christian believers in the rapture to ascend to heaven as quickly as the Lord will make room for them. Codrescu's first book of poetry was Licensed to Carry a Gun in 1970, and his most recent, The Art of Forgetting, 2019. He writes novels and essays and won the Peabody Award for the film Rhodes Scholar. Andrei, over to you.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Fong. Thank you, Brooklyn Rail. Thank you, Anselm, for thinking of this series. And welcome everyone, readers and watchers, to this perfect site mid worldwide pandemic, Trumpism, fascism, floods, fires, the perfect setting for a reading. We have a stellar group of poets here now, all of whom I dare say are unrepentant radicals. In my view, poetry is radical. The times require it. I grew up in Romania, a Soviet satellite that paid close attention to poets. Censors were our best readers. They hawk-eyed our verses for subversive language against the ideology. You never knew what anti-state message might hide inside the seemingly oblique metaphor. A red cow, really? I miss those censors. They're great readers. In the Stalinist era, poets were executed or imprisoned for as much as hinting at the fact that Stalin was only 5 foot 5 inches. The average height of his statues was between 15 and 25 feet, with the tallest straddling the Volga and Don rivers. The truth in every area of life was forbidden. We're not quite there with Trumpism. A mountain hasn't yet been destroyed for his likeness. And Stalin's Twitter feed was more deadly. In 1966, I came to New York during the revolution. The poets, some of the poets that will read, I met them here, and they remember well how we were compelled by the energy of the anti-war movement and the Black Panthers to revolutionize poetry itself. The zeitgeist didn't give us a choice. Later in the 1980s and 1990s, I often gave my students an assignment to write a poem they could get arrested for. Very few of them were capable of it. We just don't sufficiently punish our poets here. Well, soon that might change, actually, if we allow it. I hope that this wonderful poetry series will help make it happen. W.H. Auden wrote on the death of Yeats, "Mad Ireland hurt you into poetry. Now Ireland has her madness and her weather still, for poetry makes nothing happen. It survives, a way of happening, a mouth. Poetry does make things happen, even if it's only killing the boredom of politics." The first of our poets today is someone who made a great many things happen. Alicia Ostriker is America's most fiercely honest poet, as per Progressive magazine. She was named by Governor Andrew Cuomo the New York State Poet Laureate. She won the National Book Award and other honors that weigh heavily on anyone. Would weigh heavily on anyone, but Alicia Ostriker, who is fierce, funny, Jewish, and all New York, wears them lightly, like a true fighter still busy with the ongoing battles. She's a radical poet in the best American sense of that word. Among her many books are the Volcano sequence and Stealing the Language, the Emergence of Women's Poetry in America. Her new collection is Waiting for the Light. Alicia Ostriker.
Alicia, there should be a notification.
Okay, am I unmuted now? All right. Hello, everybody. Happy to be here. Looking forward to hearing everybody else. Yeah, I have an honor or two, and I find that my honors and my Metro card will get me into the subway. I'm going to read some poems about New York City, where I was born, but lived in New Jersey for 50 years and have now come back. This is the first poem I wrote after moving back to Manhattan. August morning, Upper Broadway. As the body of the beloved is a window through which we behold the blackness and vastness of space pulsing with stars, and as the man on the corner with his fruit stand is a window, and the cherries, blackberries, raspberries, avocados, and carrots are a rose window, like the one in Chartres, yes, or the one in Paris, through which light floods from the other world, the pure one, stabbing tourists with malicious, abundant joy. Though the man is tired in the summer heat and reads his newspaper listlessly without passion, and people pass his stand buying nothing, let us call this scene a window looking out, not at a paradise, but as a paradise might be if we had eyes to see the women in their swaying dresses, the season's fruit, the babies in their strollers, infinitely soft, clear window after clear window. So that's the first poem I wrote walking around my neighborhood, and I liked it. It was lyrical, it was sweet, but there was something missing from it, and that had something to do with the energy and something to do with the language. I found, although I'm living on West End Avenue where there are a lot of Jews, when I walk up to Broadway, everybody's speaking Spanish, right? Which was disconcerting until I remembered that when my grandparents came here, everybody was speaking Yiddish. So it's the same story. The light. What is the birthplace of the light that stabs me with joy? And what is the difference between avocados sold on the street by a young man conceived in Delhi, and avocados sold in the West Side Market by cornrow girls. I am anyhow afloat in tides of Puerto Rican, Cuban, Mexican, West Indian Spanish, wavelets of Urdu, swelling like oceans, sweating like jackhammers, rasping like crows, calling out in the West Side Market, the Rite Aid, and every other shop on the street. ¿Por qué no comprendes? You don't own this city anymore. The city belongs and has always belonged to its shoals of exiles, crashing ashore in foaming, salty droplets. Como no, gringuita, with their dances and their grandmothers, with their drinking and their violence and their burning thirst for dignity and smelling money. What is the joy? Is it those lamps of light, those babies in their strollers, those avocados with their dark green pebbled rinds shining from inside? 2 for $4 in the West Side Market and 3 for $4 from the cart. Joy like white light between the dollar bills. Is it these volleys of light fired by ancestors who remember tenements, the sweatshops, the war, who supposed their children's children would be rich and free? Okay, this is a longer one. Interlude, the Avenue of the Americas. Above the tongues of taxicabs, the horns and buyers, the teeth of buildings grin at each other, the institutions of media, medicine, publishing, fashion know how to bite through human flesh like a hinged aluminum trap, chopping the necks of beavers, or like logging rigs, those saws that go through a 500-year-old redwood in about 5 minutes. Take out 1,000 acres of virgin Oregon forest annually because loggers need jobs. Intellectuals need the special sections of the New York Times stacked on driveways, each rosy dawn. The Japanese need the sawdust these pines and spruces finally get ground into. Everybody needs what they can get and more. Yesterday, walking between 53rd and 52nd on the Avenue of the Americas at twilight on my way to a good restaurant with good friends, I passed 3 beggars wrapped in plastic. Why not say beggars? Why invent novelty phrases like the homeless, as if our situation were modern and special instead of ancient and normal, the problem of greed and selfishness? The beggars turned toward me. I put money in the woman's cup, though I didn't like her facial sores. Her drowned eyes bobbed to the surface, as if they believed for a second something new was about to happen, but nothing was. So the eyes sank rapidly back like crabs into sand, and sorrow pressed into me like a hot iron. After which, I hurried through the hurrying crowd, sky overhead, primrose and lilac, skyscrapers, uncanny mirrors filled with cloud bouquets, to overtake my friends who had strolled ahead, chatting so as not to be embarrassed by the sight of charity, the bad odor of need. Okay, this one, I'm going to dedicate this one to Mr. Pompeo, whom we saw last night telling lies from some rooftop in Jerusalem. Dare I call you cousin? And it's also dedicated to Francis Payne Adler, who made a set of videos of which this is one. A wall is a symbol of safety that never works. It didn't keep the Mongols out. It tightens the fear inside you like a buckle. We reach the Ramallah checkpoint at 5 a.m. The video camera scans a large barred cage. The crowd inside is a mass of noisy animals. A child is crying, "Papa, I have to pee." The camera turns to a dark-eyed Israeli soldier, perhaps first time in life away from Mama, who stands unmoving, doesn't look, doesn't listen, taught to transform the mirror of his soul, those fathomless brown eyes, into a wall. We know that fear is crushing souls on both sides of the wall. And from these grapes, we know what wine will flow. And this is an older poem from when I was still living in Princeton, New Jersey. Memorial Day. Thanks, but no thanks. No parade, no drum, no strutting majorettes. Oh, it's a sonnet. I forgot to say. This is a sonnet. Memorial Day. Thanks, but no thanks. No parade, no drum, no strutting majorettes. No kids jumping up and down to see, no brazen trumpets, and no striding troops, no polished horseflesh prancing, no oratory, no heroes, no service, no high sacrifice, no love of freedom, no flag flapping in breeze, no hand upon my patriotic heart, no generals, no mayor, no filthy lies that do not resurrect either the dead or those they slew or cities they destroyed, no pious silence, no taps at 3 p.m., no masquerade of peace, no parade. I'm in my hammock, in my own backyard, remembering our wars. I take it hard. How's my time? Have I used up my 10 minutes? Yeah. Okay. Thank you all. Have a great reading, everybody else. Onwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia. That was so lovely to hear. The next reader is John Godfrey. John Godfrey, this bio is written by Andrei. John Godfrey, John Ashbury, John Giorno, and John Cage are four of the magnificent Johns who make poetry and New York proud. A Lower East Siderian per se, John has written a number of books, including The City That Keeps, Selected and New Poems, 1966 to 2014, a collection that can serve future scholars to recreate in sharp detail the people who lived and loved in this coming heap of rubble, if Trump has his way. Godfrey served for 17 years as a nurse clinician specialized in HIV/AIDS. He has seen it all, and his poetry sees even more. About his poetry, John Yao, poet and critic, has said that Godfrey's poetry is open to the minute particularities and imaginative wanderings of everyday life, the multitude of wayward thoughts, musings, and associations, the erogenous zone of thinking and looking. John, over to you.
I'm unmuted. Okay. I'm glad, first of all, to hear people mention Native Americans. I call them Americans, remembering that they had lived here between 10,000 and 20,000 years. And when the European bastards got here, all of North America was a thriving temperate forest. I am reading a book by Jeffrey Ostler, Ostler, called Surviving Genocide, Native Nations, and the United States, dealing with the history of land theft east of the Mississippi in the 16th, 17th, 18th, and early 19th centuries, which convinces you that the great disease that Europeans brought to North America and to the Americans was real estate disease. I'm going to open with a statement that was requested when I contributed an essay to this book, published by Rail Editions in 2018, called Message Ahead, Poets Respond to the Poems of Jonas Mekas. The book was edited by Vincent Katz, who also was the major translator of Mekas. Asked me for a statement about my concerns. This is in January of 2018, and here's what I said. As humans exhaust all the possible depredations that can be committed by beliefs, the earth is proving that she belongs to the earth. We have colonized her, and she will overthrow us violently in a war of liberation unless radical acts of divestment and concession are realized, not just considered. I'm going to read 5 poems. My poems go by quick. From this book, A Torch for Orphans, published by Cuneiform Press. Publisher is Kyle Schlesinger. Beautiful artwork on the cover, almost life-size, by Jen Waters. First poem, Civ Dis, the DTs. Watch you don't step on my shine, punk. Between my elbows and my glasses is no fly. Between my fly and my thigh is outer space capsule. You just be quiet, to we. Hanging fence, mon cul. To all non-binary guerrilla cadres, his gender mind's a scant 2 inches. To all multi-maroon intransigent cliques, his color lacks obedience. To all fern-head body downs, lay them down on denialer's werewolf. Ain't no living wage in armor garden. Ironic camouflage is our exposition. Subvertationist catwalk knows time. Observe without you hide. Change mode of muckwash. Can't predict change, so change like it's yours to do. Them who backwalk don't see the curtain drops, don't see the separated baby head ain't Martian. Them who backwalk stay in their way. Written the 29th of November, 2016. Triple beam. Nets blow listless, safety holes eaten large in species of draft. Columbia, the hyphenated gem, sells out dying mom. No kissing her, too moldy, too much harm in the mood. Women and children downstairs to gray steel doors. Watch this insult routine to coo out the senses. When is justice ever blind? Her hand on triple beam, Taylor's eye decides the welcome. How steerage you look today, or come rain or come shine. And she does what I can't see in her accidental home. Ill stars, the DTs. Subconscious resentment meets permissive slime, like that. Don't hardly have time to pull back mic from holified bleep speech vapor, charcuterie assassination, libelous claims in wireless air. Virtual impalement on guns with butter lube. Don't deserve a world such as mine. I must have tired, juicy mango. Mustafa of known ill stars back, his trailer, good price, good goods. Brown's shop fruit here. Mustafa's smiling eyelids instinctively rein in the obvious. Not what story, rather, what story not? The system. The system that works is one of the forgotten. A lore you can guess at if only you can observe it. Like hammocks don't care which human is real. Only you will learn that fucking in trees is for nymphs. Don't mistake that for a law. Depends what your stake is. Marbled steak, sweepstake, or high stakes. You get a flash, come up with prior results, one of which is extinction. The sea levels with you, royal flush in sulfurs, 4 of a kind in acids. Where you came from is no place to go to. Bedtime approaches for H. Bonzo. Not for all the horses on flags, not for all the eyeballs in seas. Tighten straps on mask, protect hair from micron dusts, skin from searing forge. No more separate ways to go. Sands of fantasy fall in glass, conjugation at the bottleneck. Time will be relieved of math. Last LED'll crap out. Last inarticulate pain buried. No one left to hide. Unhappy folklore. The composition goes loopy the longer he plays. Reeds bust the windscreen. Dresses unfurl and furl throughout the Savoy. Ecstatic discipline for small fee. The beat's only a dream unless you dance. 17-chair blowout, Casa Loma. Van Vechten takes the dream to darkroom. Couples take the street as real. Liberty so momentary. Jim Crow, 1 car behind. Drive home that third-hand Packard past dark windows of unhappy folklore. Race to the side, 80 years on. Hands on the wheel, wheels on the shoulder. Driver's side palaver is racial. Dash compartment is. All conveyance is racial. Color deepens to be alive and ride. Halfway free should you die. These are poems I've written since the beginning of the year. Bullshit tip, the DTs. What you told me? Now that lie ain't worth the Charmin it smeared on. Galumph rhymes with drumph. From frat decoy to centerfold sting in the nuthatch. When he gets there, do they doll him up? Do they recognize his ignorance of menu? Does he shill a bullshit tip? This is getting off at no place. I own a spread-on cheese and a commode in a closet. I see you and raise you 50. Nah. Cash. Some people may remember that the Viet Minh were succeeded by the Viet Cong in the late 1940s. This poem is called Earth Minh. Strip of dead deeps inflected with suffocation. White burden all so outsize innocence. Wary snowhawk sees bipeds flood black bear in light. Meadows picnicked in the houses. Earthmen liberate earth with waters and blows. If you brown, you drown. Straight through, no intermission. Empty swivel. You get cheated and, well, cheat back. A wall around the empty swivel chair. Over the wall, the same again. I'd be the last to say self-sufficient, and so drowned like appendage, like coin. Choir sings to choir, and they sicken each other. Those who earn 3/5 of one care. Those who are sued at birth step out front and solo, as lonely women do. Night introduces subwords, groans, and abrupt articulations. She is tired, I think, and I show her to a resting place. Tank of inertia. A nation in remote correspondence to numbers and landlords. She, you can tell, is too ruined in ways you want to spin until half taught. In the subjunctive, as if she's of great profitability. She gives her name to a dream. The lighting is brilliant, the face is soft. Irresistible objects meet the tank of inertia. A minty liquor leaks to refresh all you mean by vigor, more than urgent or you fume. By then she is no longer dream. I smell leather and essence. I hear the weighty sound as car doors shuts, luxury 50s sedan. Rather than shadowy fender, reflection of red heels on Simon eyes. Behind the wheel, that domestic ride, don't feel potholes. She's scary on curves. 10 million solstices. Wet, half-closed eye, tag team wrestles with daylight. Dust cloths on every affect. Why not my arm? Grilled street doors of vintage gear. Respiratory cluster per standards. Breath tightens random exposures. Balm through my gills. Eponymous soup of finger snaps. Gong, I dip my ear into snack. Verrazano vibrates south 5 miles. Voila, a stencil of rhythm. I dance so fast the eye sees me as stalled. How benign is my call out? Like that, yeah. Like that, no. All the proxies look it. Omens already pass behind. What's next is too soon. Future looks an arc fashioned of hemp nets. Out of the way for the next 10 million solstices of winter. Abominable summers, the long ones, and the endless one. Last poem, These Unfrayables. Night changes color. I keep up the walk, but not the talk. End of avenue ends. What profit this wattage, these unfrayables? Halogen eyes sunk each side of grill. Calm, contemporary engine rolls by. Your browner than dirt eye would make it climactic, like who loses who first and takes second standing up. You only think the moment's yours. Best about the future is it's not memory. Truth is impossibly accurate recall. A white crow on disassembled altar. A deep hole of granite melt that makes you blind. Thanks, folks.
Thank you so much, John. That was very beautiful. The next reader is Sharon Mesmer. Sharon Mesmer is Chicago's gift to New York. Poet, performer, teacher, and scholar, Mesmer has, like her possible ancestor, mesmerized audiences and enlisted cadres of the young at New School and other nurseries of verse. She is a major in the army of the young, as Ted Berrigan once said. She has bridged poetry and music and founded several means of poetic production, including Flurf, a feminist Dada spawn. Among her many collections are Annoying Diabetic Bitch and Half Angel, Half Lunch. Sharon Mesmer features often in Trump's Nightmares. There should be
There,
oh,
I unmuted it now. I hope I feature in his nightmares. He's never blocked me on Twitter though, so I'm waiting for that to happen. Thank you, Andrei, for asking me to read with this illustrious group of poets. You must have been hallucinating when you came up with the idea of me, but I'm really thankful. And thank you, Emily, for all the communiques and last minute questions answered. I'm going to read 4 poems from a manuscript that I'm working on called Even Living Makes Me Die. And the manuscript is dedicated to 35 underknown women poets of the Americas. So from Canada, I think, to Uruguay, I have found amazing, inspiring women poets who were not really recognized in their lifetimes, and some of them died tragically, either by their own hand or someone else's. And each poem, I've done research on each of the poets, and each poem contains something of their lives and maybe something of their cadences. I'm not trying to copy them or mimic them. I'm just trying to sort of honor them for what they did. So I'm going to read 4 poems from that manuscript, and then a 5th poem, which is a little funnier, about the quarantine. So the first poem is called My Supper Had a Song Inside, after Violeta Parra, Chile, 1917 to 1967, with the last line by Hakuin. My supper had a song inside. My song was the world before the sweet gum trees. The trees were hidden inside the earth. The earth was inside an alphabet. My meat was rain and a maple tree. My maple tree was the alphabet inside the earth. The earth was an ancient lamp still burning in an urn. The urn a moon of corn, a fleet of deer. I never wondered, will there always be a song inside supper? Was there always a place like this? A place with a sweet gum tree at the beginning of everything, a sweet gum tree made of rain. To grow, I was told to bind rain with stones, to burn sweet gum to ash for a spell, to become lush, elemental, with frank allure, to think only of days to come. Now my meat is rain on the windowsills. My alphabet is wet cement. A fleet of bikes crashes past the gas station. I feel my way toward them with my tongue. And I wonder, is there still a song inside supper? Still a world burning in an urn? If there is still an alphabet, there must be an earth inside the coal and the ash. And the next poem is Next Let Us Praise Illustrious Men. And it is after Rosario Castellanos, Mexico, 1925 to 1974. And it begins with a quote by her: "We have to laugh because laughter, we already know, is the first evidence of freedom." And the quotes that are in the poem are from A People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn. Next, let us praise illustrious men, ancestors of many generations. Let us visit their gallery on National Picnic Sunday. See how their statues stare past us, mysterious as ancient carved stones. Here is the head of our long dead governor, funny little Boswell around the jowls. Masses of families on long-awaited holidays squint at his inscription. They brought us parrots, armfuls of fruit. They willingly traded everything they owned. Taking 50 of them captive, I made slaves of the entire island. In an hour, I possessed 300 men and their families. By the way, these quotes are about Columbus and his men. They're by Columbus and his men. Let us walk past the open-mouthed crowd. Observe what happens when I say, did you know his name means rank old mutton wearing a snail mitten? See how the upstanding grandfathers shake their fists? Let us continue to praise illustrious men. Their children's children stand safe today in the shelter of their accomplishments. Next is the famous 16th century civil servant, his serene eyes ever heavenward above his fashionable pencil mustache. See the young mother dipping her fingers into the chiseled letters of his most famous utterance. Let us, in the name of the Holy Trinity, capture as many of these natives as can be sold. I whisper in her ear, it is by following a trail of cheap perfume that one discovers fresh air. See how she looks at me in horror. See how she looks for a policeman. Next, let us praise the men who own death, the men who took death from others and wore it for a crown. For instance, this famous sailor, frowning like a sad basset hound in repose. A wide-eyed child diligently reads his legend aloud. Our work was to exasperate and ravage, mangle, destroy, and kill. We cut off slices of their bodies to test the sharpness of our swords. I tapped the child on the shoulder. Did you know the natives fed poison to their babies to save them? In 2 years, half the Indians were dead. In 200 years, all were gone. His mother spirits him away while I smile gently. I know the blows that truth delivers. Here finally is the still living jolly philosopher man who once opined, if not dominion, what? I once wondered, if not poetry, then what? I was not so old when he stole the words of my youth from my mouth and gifted them to his wife, who then grew an extra set of legs so she could wear ever more beautiful shoes. This whole rotund multitude, like cheap collectibles in a curio, yet I do not want to harm them, send their bloated corpses floating to the bottom of a lake. Right now, outside my kitchen window, in a crevice between missing bricks, the wing of a dead fledgling sparrow is becoming a fan of bones. So let us praise illustrious men, their inscrutable faces mysterious as ancient carved stones, the stones beneath which they buried our mothers alive. And this is a talisman after Olga Orozco, Argentina, 1920 to 1999. All I need is my heart, fashioned in the image of a god of girls. All I need is to be its boon companion, to never release it to the gravity climbing up my spine. There's no breathing in a change of season, no comfort in watching winter wheeling into spring. There is only the one sun, my secret star. Somehow this brackish cavity became its home, and if its love must be won by riddle or in battle, let my talisman be the thin rivulet etched in my wrist, evidence of long years spent learning to be a girl. And this poem is after Elise Cohen, United States, 1933 to 1962, and some of you might know who she was. She is unfortunately basically known as Allen Ginsberg's last girlfriend, but she was a poet as well, and she wrote some really beautiful work that Tony Triglio published in a collection that came out a couple of years ago. And this is called Given to Fire. Not from nowhere, not the consort of a river. What I remembered best were accidents of quiet brightness, Alan's arms around me. And if he said I was standing in the middle of the room at dawn, all in black, high on mescaline, more beautiful than the poem, then I was. And now I am passing back into the rocks, into the god of rocks. Betty said it was birds who first fitted witches with wings, while fir trees of great antiquity sang lays they'd learned from their mother, air. I say it was too easy to love the leggy one, who made me run up and down the Statue of Liberty until I learned to fly, past the frosted skylight air shaft, through the closed window, like an arrow cast, without a bow, without an owner, but borne on longing, a cool stream of air. She jumped out a window, so that's what that poem is about. My last poem is called Who. This is not from that. This is not from that collection. This was. I wrote a bunch of Flarf poems during, even though I don't write Flarf anymore. I wrote a bunch of Flarf poems during the beginning of the quarantine, just to kind of make myself laugh because everything was so unlaughable. So this is called Who is the Hero of the Core? Core was my little abbreviation for quarantine. Who is the hero of the core for Gaia Thomas? Who is the hero of the core? The hero is the apartment. The apartment is keeping me right at night. Me is a sudden startled consumer of bodega bonbons with kitchen hair and a fan. Right, because I've been stuck listening to I is the it word in core radio increments. But I listen differently, testy lovies. I pair kitchen hair with anything I tangle into takeaway. Whatever is sleep making cannot 500% kitchen hair posse me, because the kitchen is all in. And so far, the large Japanese working shears are getting bigger every minute, very painting the world bigger every minute. Once the hoping is done, there will be core smoothies, just watch out. And so I'm mayo, a verdict I'm okay with. And I'm also done wondering if I'm changed. I'm changed, I'm better. I'm a core hero with core kitchen hair and listening differently. I'll keep growing my ripping large kitchen hair into I is the it word increments. I'll do it for the apartment. Then I'll box it up. Right, I'm boxing it up now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sharon. That manuscript sounds like an incredible project. The next reader, oh, sorry. The next reader is Eleanor Nauen. Eleanor Nauen knows cars and baseball better than any American poet who has ever lived. If you doubt it, read her anthologies, Ladies Start Your Engines, Women Writers on Cars and the Road, and Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend, Women Writers on Baseball. Her own work is both epic and lyric, including So Late Into the Night, a long meditation on Jewishness, America, and her own self, born in Nebraska, tested for the past decades in New York City. Not Nebraska? Oh.
South Dakota.
Oh, South Dakota. I'm so sorry. Born in South Dakota, tested for the past decades in New York City.
Well, that's accurate.
Her latest collection, Now That I Know Where I'm Going, is a book of wisdom everyone should own. Eleanor Nauen knows profound, mysterious, and weirdly funny secrets. All right, over to you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Emily, for doing such a great job on pulling us all together. It's just fantastic to be reading with these wonderful poets and friends. And I'm going to, speaking of Violetta Parra, I'm going to start with a short poem by her brother, Nicanor Parra, who actually lived to be 103. He died just a couple years ago. Sentences. Let's not fool ourselves. The automobile is a wheelchair. A lion is made of lambs. Poets have no biographies. Death is a collective habit. Children are born to be happy. Reality has a tendency to fade away. Fucking is a diabolical act. God is a good friend of the poor. That was translated by Miller Williams. So now I'm going to read work all very recent. None of it I've read before. Personal history. I had never been in a city before I packed up my belongings in 2 paper bags and drove 1,000 miles to spend the rest of my life in New York. I was the smartest and dumbest girl in my 8th grade class. Being dumb never got me into trouble, but being smart did every day. When he saw her in a tight teal fish scale dress, he knew he had to spill a drink on her. I come from the prairie. My lies are long. On a bar stool. The government walks in talking about Bob Dylan. A man and a dog snicker. The light is low. The mood is sour. Who knows who knows who goes to the swinging John door to peep at the skinny girls hauling up their socks, who follow a large-headed, handsome man in a goose-step jacket and a line of talk, pulling us into the past, like blue comes to cheese. The barkeep can't believe another round for the house, another government for Bob and me. East Village Tales. How'd you get thrown out of so many laundromats? She asked, as though that were an accomplishment. They think I'm not serious because I'm not in debt. Here in the NABE, we live the lives we choose. That's why we live here. I was the meanest girl in Sioux Falls, and I'm the nicest girl in New York, which is only the difference between my two hometowns. Men think friendliness equals desire. Men think not saying anything is the same as telling you something. Men think not telling you anything is the same as saying something. He's a happy man, but I can make him happier. New York is missing, but I'm here. Ring of Ice, 1. I am going to say to you, a human being can live without complaint in an ice house built for seals at a temperature of 55 below. There is no land uninhabitable, no sea innavigable. Darkness gave them a certain drunken confidence. What brings me close to God is the silence of snow. 2. The half-melted office safe left from the burning of Bill Day's hotel. That was the lonesome highway calling me. Terror is the given. Open your eyes to the air that's washed the edge of the stars. Perhaps all men, by the very act of being born, are destined to. Where will we live when the world grows dark? I shall not easily forget the first time I laid eyes on Abraham Lincoln. He brushed them off with an air of disgust. Snow whirled about our ears. High in November. Cheery as a lamb, Johnny walks by and tousles my hair. And I'm back in my first months in NYC, my empty apartment, now with so much art and books and breathing. The light fixture I thought was a gas outlet, so I was afraid to touch it and didn't see my walls for years. One 4th of July, Brody sat on the middle part of an aqua-sectional couch, the only piece I had, grilling over his shoulder on the fire escape in the hibachi he'd brought. Later, I threw the couch out the window. I found broken glass in a jar of bouillon powder, and the company, by way of apology, sent me a case of caviar. I opened my tenement fridge one day to nothing but caviar and decided to throw a cocktail party. I bought a blender and made a drink of honeydew melon and vodka. I eat Tara's cookies with their specks of salt and kiss Johnny on his way to lie down and watch something that makes him laugh. I look at George's turtle every day, and every day I'm surprised to see it. Just like Ollie, I managed to get old being the same old fucked up me. This is an old story. When I didn't give the young man money, he said, "Is it because I'm black and you, a old white lady?" And I said, "That's right, fuck off." And when I told this to a guy I know, he told me a story about a girl he once lived with who made the thugs on the block back off by screaming, "You fucking pussies," her tininess making her curses louder. He found a story of his own to top, correct, and instruct me. Fuck off, you fucking pussy. My war. My head fills with glory and muck as I read about the war the poets knew. Those young men and Vera Brittain, Sassoon, Owen, Rupert Brooke, Graves. The beautiful young men of my day whose war wasn't glorious. Casualties a dozen years later from heroin and grief. Carrie tells me her brother gave her a throne, but she already has plenty blankets. I give my ice skates to Amy. All the treasures I lose and lose and lose. felon wins. We have sunk so low to make criminals of the zephyrs. That's America in 2020. The trees are dangerous and depraved. Mice don't bear thinking of. The elephant fish are two-faced. Oh, the wicked winds that scorn the good black topsoil and leave us offenders. Two more. Poem beginning with a line of Robert Lowell's. Somewhere a white wall faces a white wall, implacable, back to back. A white wall faces a brown wall. Each splashes the other's reflection. Who can advance under a desert sun, pitiless as a man, cold as ice? The walls shall not be moved. Where we once thought we were refined, we now see spider eggs in deep cuts, vanishing into an arroyo of malice, where white faces brown. And my last poem, and thank you again for putting this together and to be here. Poem. When the war came at last, we were too old to fight. We could only wait behind locked doors for the enemy to burst in. We slipped out at dawn to beg. We ran to the river to see the soldiers in their masks. Were they smiling? Did they see us? Failure left us vulnerable. Our successes left us. We wanted the past to beam on our careless beauty. We had nothing to give as cannon fodder, numbers, gurneys. No one wanted what we didn't have. We slept and woke as old people do. We slept until we were young. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eleanor, for those poems. The next reader is Vincent Katz. Okay, Vincent Katz is aristocracy. By this we mean a gentleman and a scholar. He is also a poet, an art critic, a translator, and a teacher. His practices are informed, erudite, precise, and hypnotic. In scholarship, the book Black Mountain College, Experiment in Art, co-edited with Martin Brody, is an encyclopedic look on that revolutionary time in American art, and a primer on how to make a revolution if you are so inclined. Vincent's translations of the complete elegies of Sextus Propertius is a splendid demonstration that poets are throughout the ages a small and perilous gang that will outlast politicians by millennia. His own collections of poetry are a Baedeker of a life spent looking and seeing. Read Southness and Broadway for Paul. He will read with Andrei Codrescu from An Epic of Care, a collaboration in verse that began before the pandemic and continues after. All right, over to you, Vincent.
Okay, can you hear me? Thank you, Emily and Fong and Anselm and everyone at the Rail for this whole series. It's been going on for months now, and I think is so important. And now this new radical poetry series kind of growing up within it is really exciting and important. Thank you for that. And thank you, Andrei, for being a renegade hipster and incorrigible polymath. And you're so productive. How do you do it? You must not sleep. I mean, it's just, I'm looking here and
No sleep.
and the random stack of books here, I see Whatever Gets You Through the Night by Andrei Codrescu and among many others. I had this idea actually. I taught at Naropa University about 5 years ago or so. Anne Waldman invited me there to teach, and I taught a workshop on epic and the idea of epic, including Anne Waldman's own Jovis trilogy. And I gave a talk there at Naropa, and I said that I would like to someday write an epic, not an epic of of war and not an epic maybe of history, but an epic of care. And then the idea just sort of went away. I had no way of doing that. And then at a later date, a couple of years ago, Andrei and I were talking and we said, oh, we should try to write something together, which is, by the way, I've found a very complicated thing to do. I've collaborated with visual artists and sometimes with musicians, but with not so many times. And we didn't know what to do exactly. We had a few different ideas. And then finally we thought, well, why not try this possible epic of care? So I think it was originally called A Possible Epic of Care. Maybe it's probable, or who knows. Anyhow, it's in the works. So I'm going to read from that, and some of it seems to be in prose, and some of it's more like in poetry. And some of these sections are by Andrei and some by me, which is one of the things I like about collaborating with another writer. Anne Waldman and I have collaborated too on a book. And there's a moment when you can't remember who wrote what, which is kind of the best part. So selections. Oh, and I'm also going to read a poem by Allen Ginsberg, but Andrei asked me to read that after this selection. So selections from A Possible Epic of Care. It is a Tuesday in early March. The bass throbs in Starbucks. It is somewhat impeding my enjoyment of Agrippina, which I am listening to on Spotify in advance of our visit to the Met tonight. Joyce DiDonato sings the title role in the recording, and she will sing tonight. I learned only recently that Handel spent his formative years in Rome. Everyone associates him with his life-changing success in London. Agrippina is such a story for our time, and the music, and therefore the story, flows effortlessly. No wonder it was such a hit. Joyce DiDonato is from Kansas City. And this music, apart from anything in the story itself, is helping me understand my life. I am a writer. See you in Oaxaca. Our friends died last week in a crash in Mexico where they lived. It is so strange. How do you care for the dead? Kaddish, the Tibetan Book of the Dead. And then year after year, Dia de los Muertos, All Saints Day in New Orleans. My dead, you were watching, no? Hard cars, soft bodies, broken hearts. Jeffrey and Glenn died when the VW hit a tree on the Russian River village of Monterio in California in 1977, before the internet. In our dead lies the secret of greatness. Jeffrey is the great poet still. Ted Berrigan, Jim Carroll. The real marketing machine of the cosmos is poetry. The internet is the shadow of an egret in the clear lake of eternity. I mean music. We are currently, right now, in 30 seconds of silence, remembering the great McCoy Tyner, who just passed away. WKCR is speaking and playing Message from the Nile from his album Extensions, featuring Elvin Jones, Wayne Shorter, Alice Coltrane, Gary Bartz, Ron Carter. Alice's harp is waving through my hair, weaving itself through McCoy's hand, through piano chords, rhythm pulsing almost like that great TV theme of yore. And now the horns come in unison. They are praying as they slip lightly and steadily over a horizon, dolphins jumping the spray of Alice's waves. Now the piano is soloing, or rather explicating, the left hand anchoring an ambitious outlay of rhythm in the right. The right and left, not different sides of the aisle, but one psyche interwoven. The psychic expansion of the music as differences confronted, not on the street though, no. This extension exists in some beyond, some parallel that we visited and could never return to, as Aeneas too could never return, the voyage only one consistent out. Wayne on soprano picks up the sail, he too flying the waves of piano push, Elvin hyperventilating below in chops. The harp is thrilling us again with breaths of life and mbira sound. I saw McCoy live once, solid. Silence. When the last note expires in the room you're in, deep silence knowing it will no more follow the fancies and secrets of the live show that filled you with things of the mind and images of reeds and dreams. The silence, when the recording ends, is delighted to make the voyages start again, to thieves' markets where all the goods for sale were stolen from you while you were gone. You return to the time when the living promised more, but buy what they made when you were there, sublime trips to islands of youth. We all made somethings that were more than traces, records, books, and others out of tune, anecdotes and promiscuous memories of art. I buy my own old books and wonder how they made such sound. Welcome the thieves. I like to go out in the morning because I like to see New Yorkers. I always say anyone who's lived in New York more than a month is a New Yorker. New Yorkers are survivors. This too, they survive. Thank God for Telemon. Western culture has never been a thing. Western power has been, and power likes certain kinds of culture. But look at mid-last century Germany. Who won there? The official art or the degenerate art? Artists operate on the periphery always, and sometimes deep toward the center. Thank God for Charlie Watts. The Grand Princess is at the Brooklyn. Oliver flies back from Berkeley tonight. Isaac is here and may not return to finish his semester. On the radio, Smetana's Moldau keeps flowing. It reminds me of another river, the Housatonic, as featured in Robert Underwood Johnson's poem, which Charles Ives set to song. I'm almost able to write a poem outside in this warm March weather, listening to the sounds of basketballs being bounced, swings creaking, and children's cries. Our friendship is enabling me. Somehow, outside this place where poetry is supposedly fostered, where real people are enjoying life in full view of the river, amid families and these delicious sounds of children, I've come back down after many months to the reality of poetry. And now I will read, Allen Ginsberg wrote 2 poems for his friend and fellow poet and partner in crime, one might say, Frank O'Hara. This one was written in October 1958, and the second one was written after O'Hara was killed and brutally taken. That poem's called City Midnight Junk Strains. But the poem I'm going to read now is called My Sad Self by Allen Ginsberg to Frank O'Hara. Sometimes when my eyes are red, I go up on top of the RCA building and gaze at my world, Manhattan. My buildings, streets I've done feats in, lofts, beds, cold water flats. On Fifth Avenue below, which I also bear in mind, its ant cars, little yellow taxis, men walking the size of specks of wool. Panorama of the bridges, sunrise over Brooklyn Machine, sun go down over New Jersey where I was born, and Patterson, where I played with ants. My later loves on 15th Street, my greater loves of Lower East Side, my once fabulous amours in the Bronx, far away. Paths crossing in these hidden streets, my history summed up, my absences and ecstasies in Harlem. Sun shining down on all I own, in one eye blink to the horizon, in my last eternity. Matter is water. Sad, I take the elevator and go down, pondering, and walk on the pavements, staring into all man's plate glass, faces, questioning after who loves, and stop, bemused in front of an automobile shop window, standing lost in calm thought, traffic moving up and down Fifth Avenue, blocks behind me, waiting for a moment when time to go home and cook supper and listen to the romantic war news on the radio. All movement stops and I walk in the timeless sadness of existence, tenderness flowing through the buildings, my fingertips touching reality's face, my own face streaked with tears in the mirror of some window at dusk, where I have no desire for bonbons or to own with the dresses or Japanese lampshades of intellection. Confused by the spectacle around me, man struggling up the street with packages, newspapers, ties, beautiful suits toward his desire, man, woman, streaming over the pavements, red lights clocking hurried watches and movements at the curb. And all these streets leading so crosswise, honking lengthily by avenues, stalked by high buildings or crusted into slums, through such halting traffic, screaming cars and engines. So painfully to this countryside, this graveyard, this stillness. On deathbed or mountain, once seen, never regained or desired in the mind to come, where all Manhattan that I've seen must appear. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vincent. And I think Andrei is continuing the epic.
When when Vincent and I started writing this, we were still able to wander the streets of Manhattan, which Alan, in his prophetic way, saw disappear. And then Manhattan did disappear as we went into our respective barrows. And so this section that I am going to read from our collaboration is indeed an epic of care, and not anymore of possible care, because we were indeed in a more serious situation. And but in a sense, it felt okay still. And I was alone in an apartment in Queens. And so there is no one else in the room, but there are a million beings in my body, more or less harmoniously dancing, the dance of self, once called navel gazing, or what we call finding ourselves, is all the rage now. We have found ourselves. We are prisoners of the dancing world of molecules and cells, auditoriums for dancing lit strings of DNA. Get microscopes, everyone. If not in New York, telescopes, naval microscopes, telescopes for stars having sex in a million windows. If I go to prison for the crimes I haven't yet been caught for, I would like to do time in New York, in a room with a view, if possible. Money has been replaced by the abundance of play and music. The prisoners in real prisons would kill for our freedom. They probably have already and know just what to do when they leave. There is no escape from New York, but we can see the movie. The planet is relieved to see humanity in prison. All those diggers, earth movers, soil disturbers, tree cutters, flesh eaters, human hunters, smoke makers, fossil fuckers, species reducers, synthesizers of the myriad fruits of the garden to make commercial whole foods of apples and flowers and mushrooms. The planet rejoices in our quarantine. Our bodies are full of dancing prisoners of the dictator's self. In millions of quarantined rooms, the tools of self-discovery wait observation and sharing out the windows. Look at all the people singing together on balconies in Naples. Likewise, within us sing bodies and antibodies. There is no cure, there is no luck, there is only the planetary idea that we must slow down and join the cosmic dance. It would be nice to have lunch at a great restaurant, but you and I are great restaurants where every sound carries far. These are the benefits of social paralysis. I prefer them to the adrenaline of war. It's time out. We are making from the extraterrestrial virus of the language of Ovid a companion, COVID, the first exiled Romanian bat. The iPhone just lit up to say that Amazon is not sending us anything inessential. I hope they don't mean microscopes and telescopes. And even if, when we eat our dearest or will be eaten by them, we'll see with the naked eye just how marvelous we are. We are solitary cannibals now. Why not know everything? This poem is turning me into Mayakovsky, an ignorant giant in love with every woman individually and everyone in the Soviet Union, a country he saw as a Rubik cube of love, until his best friend Sergei Yesenin committed suicide, and friends and lovers started disappearing in the camps, where their poems gained weight and started swinging like barbells on the Kremlin. Poems, cried the apparatchiks and future oligarchs. Poems are coming for us. And the poems did, becoming heavier and heavier, like rockets of tungsten. Poems, evil beings from outer space, hungry for human innards, lungs in particular. How the oligarchs of the future, but they were the first victims. Well, I just want to thank everyone. This poem goes on. It's a long poem, right, Vincent? And he needs those silences, which are wonderful, which I can't really do. But it was a wonderful group of poets and friends who read these amazing works. So thank you much.
Thank you so much.
You can unmute us now, and so we can talk.
We have
One more poet first.
Oh, that's right. Anne is reading. Oh my God. The president of poetry. No,
Yes, exactly. Anne Waldman is the president of poetry. She is a lot like FDR and JFK. She created a half-century WPA of poetry beginning at the St. Mark's Poetry Project in New York in 1967. She co-founded with former President Allen Ginsberg the Naropa University's Jack Kerouac School of Disembodied Poetics in Boulder, Colorado. Anne Waldman is also the Pablo Neruda and Mayakovsky of American political poetry. Anne Waldman, but she is in addition a feminist and a shaman. Her books take 1 hour to list, but the latest are Sanctuary from Spoiten Deuvel and Trickster Feminism from Penguin Books. There is no one like Anne Waldman.
Thank you so much, Emily, and so wonderful to hear you all. Thanks for putting this together, Andrei, and thanks to the Brooklyn Rail for continuing this series, and especially this new sort of iteration, which I'm very excited about. So just to open, I wanted to read from this interesting book, Necropolitics, Achille Mbembe, and I've been sort of extracting things and doing these little meditations every day on some of these. And this came up a lot during the sequester periods. And I'm here in Mexico City, kind of sequester with my son Ambrose, his partner Natalia, and the new baby, who's kind of napping, I'm not sure, we'll see if she makes an appearance. This is, so I'll just jump in. A new and unprecedented phase in the history of humanity has effectively begun, in which it will become increasingly difficult, if not impossible, to distinguish human organisms from electronic flows, the life of humans from that of processors. This phase is made possible by accumulated know-how concerning the storage of enormous data flows, by the extreme power and speed of their processing, and by advances in algorithmic computation. The terminal point of this digital cognitive turn could well be a widespread infiltration of microchips into biological tissues. Already underway, this humano-mechanic coupling has not only led to the genesis of new mythologies of the technical object, it has also had the immediate consequence of calling into question the very status of the modern subject stemming from the humanist tradition. The other decisive factor in the process of release is the lifting of drive inhibitions, a return of the excluded part of the structures embracing the repressed element, and a multiplication of enhanced pleasures resulting from this lifting and from the fact that moral consciousness is ousted when it is not simply decommissioned. What sorts of pleasure gains might be possible today for those lacking in inhibition and whose moral consciences are decommissioned? What might explain the contemporary attraction exerted on the multitude by the idea of absolute and irresponsible power? What is the mood for the most extreme actions, the receptiveness to the simplest and most flawed arguments, and what of the swiftness with which many fall into line with others and with which world powers engage in all sorts of infamy owing simply to a consciousness of their own strength? So this brings in, a whole ethos around oppositional poetics, living in the antithesis reality. So I'm going to jump in with a few things here. This is out of Denouement. And the day would be proud of itself, going on as if it hadn't already collapsed, had not been destroyed, riven, all the people mad and metabolically downcast. It's around the eyes, it's around the hearts. The city was reeling. People were coming out to the street in the way they wanted to see where the big guy lived and boasted, so as to mock the event. It wasn't over. It wasn't going to rest. The guy was not real as the day, as the year, the century, the epoch shared was not real. The tribulation he ensued was not real, but it was that affect that mattered. What would suffer? It was the warmest year on record. If that wasn't enough to make some citizens pause, and pausing resist, and if resisting insist on being heard and calibrated so that measures were taken round the clock, ice caps photographed melting and all the rest, a pull away from accountability. How ugly would it go? Resistance had to resist, exercise, defy, apotropaic experiments to shift tone and danger. Make the day an amulet, and there were women everywhere across the land, children women, girl women, they women, and fluid women, and men who were women, and boy women, and women from the past, on the tongues of mind and ear, and images of women everywhere, ancestor women, out on the streets, and every one woman that day. I am woman, they said, and it had already happened if you stopped to think. Winning in Maynard heaven, but could earthly heart hold? The day said, I am woman. The day got up and walked this far and paused to take stock. It was the last chance to be observant and cry and stomp and take stock. What worth, if not be accountable? It would be theater, a spectacle, come pay, or come lie down in fluid bosom of woe, mankind. And this is from Clytemnestra's Bodies, Polis, Ticks. Sensimea, the snake, Sensimea with its eyes, Sensimea. Nicholas Guillen and Donna Haraway. I'd rather be a cyborg than a goddess, I wonder. Be such a strong fact. You would sleep of those I kill, milk running over. Name a variant of scheme to act not hurt a body, render it barren, bodies politic, nor spilling dripping rains. A theme demands, turn it up, the hungry Syrians. And who is up for rule? A Labrys, the double-headed axe for thought, carnage for thought. Suffer eclipse, can't see the syndicates, but see their murder spill forth. for want of a brain. Yet I have without wine succumbed this crazy politic. Unhooked the little box world, men are stumping their speeches, white bodies in the horror void whose desiccated lips spew oil. I can't be media for want of a brain. Stains set you free after vetting secret plaques, pacts and deals, and go crazy with conspiracy. I always vote beside the hearth, keep my house alive, be not a murderer of sleep. Block at the feet, eyes and heart, for want of a brain stem, the nukes go free. All my arrows were the candidates, this, that, person, aggrandizement. The self goes down in augury with a nuked family body. For want of a society, the bees run free. For want of a fibula, the world strums. Sisters elective our wonder, a barker, pearls and blue beads, cobalt stuff, a prison outfit. Oh, carceral, for want of obstruction, run free. Oh, antithesis, reality, oh, body in chains, and the other one had a cufflink, perhaps. Will others don? Will you swear, keep an upright way, America? Pancake makeup and pundits and sway to a better idea. Make no mistake, when greater disaster comes, robber baron is all you guys are. Hem of my psychic state will not go gentle. Helm out of the riches yet, mid grips for the temps on strike in Michigan. This is not a red state, this is the seat of palace, alive in the estates of the father. Enough, cry hold, poison darts, and they come from a mocking tree in ritual misadventure upon all who stroll across oaths. Hunted beast slips from our nets, gone to Sambokakaya, timeless body of light. Won't sleep with me no more, no more, no more, no more. For want of a bed, charioteers go on strike. For want of a whip, mount the statue of Athene and her plebes suckle at bitter breast. Eyes with blood who cannot see, but it's plain to see. Stain and power, the activist streets, receive your call. Out in the streets again, out in the streets again. In secrecy of night, spring clear for want of an ear. Hear what it calls to all minions. Resist, retort, reclaim. For want of a tongue, the world crumbles. You cannot forget my dream furies. For want of imagination, whimper you must. For want of an ark, you cannot get me an ark. For want of the sea, for want of my solace, a kind of dramaturgy. Go, Hermes, pour me these lustral waters, or get up, feet. For want of a mother snake or hound whose thought of hunting has no shape. Sick 'em, let go, bloodshot breath, vitals heat. The dumb TV wake and speak severally. No more promises. In the town hall, you want plurality. In the town hall, try the whole matricidal chorus, pumped up for this. For one of a forum, let stabbing voice of the Etruscan speak. Let her breathe. A single ballot can restore a treehouse. O gods of the younger generation, under pods of future cruelty, serpent power of sinewy cruelty, or staggering beast wore out its time. Fuck land and bring your ton of hatred upon it. Tyranny not bring your bulk of hatred on anything. Oh, really, really, but civility. I promise you a void. I promise you a place in the sacrosanct booth or in the mailbox. Jagged loners eat the seeds, but I'll accept all devotions by you, citizens. A bear will not touch a dead body. Old Russian slogan. And then a little bit finally from, just another minute. Strangling me with your lasso of stars, Aimé Césaire, Night the Immigrant. And I want to read this being here down below the border. Night the Immigrant, words were totems, words were spells, were beasts. What is authority? Tiny, fragile human, authority pitted against tiny, fragile human, pity, fragile, tiny human. Days slowing, stars are oscillating, stars are fields, waves of probability. The words were ambiguous, words were closures, words wore a necklace, words are mistakes, stuff of Max Planck's constant probable chronography, stuff of reason, ache of the day, ache of the day. Never sleep in razor wire, a detonating device sits below on 27th Street. FBI, a robot detonates a box at 3 a.m. Words were clipped, words were missed, words are knives, then water, then drowning, the drowned child. The words were continuity, guns and keys. The man with these things stops hounding, yearning. Oh, my baby's crying. The stars are projections, shelter is post-cultural. Come up from south, come up this way, a better life. A new dream beyond borders. No expectations take you up. May art never be forbidden. May all escape their tormentors. Words are slippery, waiting to safety, to waiting to crossing to safety, to crossing to waiting in front of you. Night again, waiting, a bomb in your closet. Wait in front of you. Look up. Abstract stars, more pitiless, don't notice you, and break hard, words are pushing, and break hard, words could be travelers, could be gentler, and their sound. Thank you so much.
A magnificent ending to a magnificent reading. Thank you.
My little girl, I have to show you. This is Cora by a
please. Yeah. Hey.
See. Hola. 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 This is my candidate.
Oh, thank you so much, Anne. Thank you for your energy. Andrei, thank you for organizing this. It's been such an incredible gathering. And thank you everyone who came out today. Thank you, Alicia, John, Sharon, Eleanor, Vincent, Anne. And please join us tomorrow at 1 p.m. for a conversation between Donna Shaper and Arati Shahani. And I will unmute everyone now for goodbyes and thank yous. Thank you all so much. Or you're now able to unmute yourself.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emily and Fawn.
Thanks for everything.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hey,
Peter, Gregor,
I'd like to add that this is the 140th anniversary of the birth of Guillaume Apollinaire.
Yay.
Woo! Yeah, woo! Salute! Amazing.
wow.
John, thank you, Anne. Thank you, Andrei. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you, Andrei. This is amazing. Thank you, Vincent. Again.
Thank you.
This is delightful. Thank you, Anne. It's such a big pleasure. It fills our soul with such joy and optimism. Thank you so much. This is
Thank you,
terrific.
Fawn.
Yeah, it's the beginning.
Hey, Simon, Canada.
Hey, how are you? Thank you. Thank you, Kyle. Caroline. Stand in love and courage.
Oliver.
Yes. Hello.
Oliver visible? He's invisible.
Okay.
Yes. Hello.
Yourself.
Well, this is a wonderful reading, and I'm sorry, Eleanor, that I moved your birthplace. How many miles between Nebraska and South Dakota?
Oh, 5.
5.
9. It's a border. It's a border state.
Oh, it is. So I didn't move you very
Yeah,
far.
but it's a huge difference. It's like the difference between Romania and Moldova or Moldavia or whatever that is.
Right.
New Jersey and Manhattan. And of course, South Dakota is Manhattan and Nebraska is something else.
Hi, Simon. Simon,
Hey, that
hi.
was great, everybody.
Hey, Simon.
It is. Look.
Where's Simon?
What is that?
Hi, Ada. Hi, Vivian.
Is there too. Hi, Vivian.
Hi, Vivian.
Oh, Simon.
Hey, I just saw Ada.
Gallery is. Ah,
Oh.
Ada.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Andrei. Thank you,
thank you,
Alicia.
Alicia.
Oh, yeah.
Wonderful reading.
Thanks, everybody.
Can't wait for the next one. Stand in love and much courage for now. Deep
Thank
appreciation.
you.
Thank you
Back
all.
on you.
Great. Thank you for.
Yeah, it's muted, I guess, you know.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Bye.
Hey, Kyle. Good to see you.
Even silent, I could feel everybody present.
Yes.
It's so hard to say goodbye.
Mm.